Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a point of personal privilege, I'd like to recognize in the audience, he was my mentor when I joined the Energy and Commerce Committee, Ed Whitfield, back there. Thank you. Thanks for, and you show you've not deviated one bit from your interest in energy. So thank you for coming. Ms. Levinsky, you kind of took the wind out of my sails. I wanted to talk about that Fourth Circuit, the ruling on Friday, because it overturned the previous denial from the EPA for Ergon, which is just a boutique refinery in West Virginia. And they've been burdened with this. Think about, for all of us to understand this cost. Here we have a boutique refinery, 23,000 barrels a day. And they're faced with the same issues that like Marathon is. Marathon refinery, that's 100 times larger. That doesn't seem right. We should be able to differentiate between these and provide these hardship grants, waivers for some of these small. Think 100 times larger, because we know that for Ergon in West Virginia, it's the third biggest expense they have behind raw materials and labor. And what the biofuels industry had argued that granting these small refineries like the one at Ergon, this hardship exemption was going to result in demand destruction. So I want to go to Ms. Dunphy and say, in a kind of a yes or no, if you could, please. Do you believe that granting these small refinery hardship exemptions result in less renewable fuel being included?
So, as I mentioned earlier, the small refinery waivers are granted retrospectively. So the compliance year has already passed. But every refiner assumes that they're going to be an obligated party during that year. And they will continue to blend renewable fuels and buy RINs as needed, because they don't know that they're going to get the exemption at the 12th hour in the next, when they go to report to the EPA by March the 31st of the following year. So I suggest that you all definitely talk to the small refineries in the U.S. and ask them if they've changed their blending policies because they think they're going to be exempted for the year. And I think you will find that they have not changed their blending policies. They continue to blend. They continue to purchase RINs. What they do is focus on current year RINs rather than the 20% prior year. So if they get the exemption, they still will be able to use the current year RINs in the next year. So that puts more RINs into the market. We understand that. But does it destruct the demand of the current year? I would say that if you look at the RIN data through June, we're at the same production level that we were in 2017, and we're halfway towards meeting the 2018 compliance RVOs. So whether that will hold true for the entire year, I don't know.
But EIA had come out. I thought they just saw some information yesterday on EIA. It said that actually the blending over the first part of this year, the 6 months, 7 months you referred, we're actually up over last year. That actually we're increasing. So despite having all of these small refinery exemptions, is this a confirmation that small refinery exemptions do not destroy the demand for renewable fuel?
You know, we should remember that refiners would probably blend ethanol regardless of whether there was an RFS or not, because ethanol represents a very good source of octane. It helps them meet their gasoline, sulfur, and benzene requirements. So they have an incentive to blend ethanol, and they're going to do that. So I would say that the data through 6 months for the EMTS data that's published, that anyone can see, it's public information, shows that we are on track with last year. Whether that will continue through the rest of the year, I can't predict.
Thank you.
Just one open question is whether or not a prior year's waiver creates a supply, potentially, an increased supply of carry forward RINs that a refiner can use, because a refiner can use either this year or last year's RIN to meet this year's obligation. And that's the question going forward is, if there's more of last year's RINs available, what does that do to the market? And I think that's still an open question.
Let's stay with you just for a minute. With the original intent of this RFS and RIN program, have we achieved that objective that was set out on that? Or have we have we created a confusing and costly commodity system? What would be your opinion?
In terms of congressional intent, I wouldn't speculate. I will say that there are no congressional findings or specific stated goals in the statute, and so various players have attributed various goals to the program, whether that is increasing agricultural production, raising farm incomes, reducing imports of fuel. Certainly, increased biofuel use has displaced petroleum use. There have been economic benefits to agricultural states from the program. If you consider those to be the goals of the RFS, then yes, they've been successful. Is the program complicated? Certainly.
Gentleman's time is
My time's
expired.
expired. Go back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Chair now recognizes gentleman from Mississippi,